Alright, relate. So the movie opens up with a young Jim Hawkins reading a story about a legendary pirate. And no, it's not my goat Luffy, but Captain Flinch. His mom walks in the room and is surprised he's not asleep yet. Cause bro, why are you scrolling TikTok? Go to sleep, nigga. But Jim begged her to finish the story, so she gives in and sits beside him as they read together. The story says that Captain Flinch hid all his stolen treasure far off into the galaxy on this planet called Treasure Planet, and anyone who manages to find it will be rich and powerful. Why does this sound so familiar? He asks his mom if she thinks it's real, but she tells him she thinks it's more of a legend than real. He tells her he believes it's real and is going to find it one day. Bro, I just said real so many times, what the fuck? She tags him in for bed and then leaves the room. But bro went right back to reading, and then we get a 12-year time skip with a now older Jim surfing the sky with his solar surfer. Bro was out here doing moves so crazy and daredevil like, all while smiling. He was having the time of his life. He peeps this little opening in this machine and says, "Bet, watch this," and clears it with ease. Absolutely no reason to be doing this, by the way. Bro was in for the thrill of it. But his little performance comes to an end when this universe's 100 police pulls up on him for reckless surfing, I guess. We cut to his mom taking and handing out orders in a shop, and that's when we get introduced to another important character, Doc. He was having a little combo with James' mom when the cops opened the door with Jim in front. Bro grew up to be a little YN, causing trouble and making his mom worry. The cops tell his mom one more incident and bro is going straight to juvie. His mom is kind of disappointed in him, but bro wants something more than his current life can offer. So at night, while sitting on his rooftop tossing rocks, he pees this mini spaceship crash and then goes to check it out. And out comes this guy who had a treasure box and was kind of talking crazy. Bro must have hit his head pretty hard. Jim takes him back home and they try saving his life. But he tells Jim about this cyborg guy he should watch out for before handing him the treasure and exiting the server. Not long after, a ship arrives and out comes a group of pirates approaching their house. He tells his mom it's time to dip and they make a run for it. The pirates invade the house and begin to search for the treasure but couldn't find anything. Jim and his mom along with Doc make an escape and head to Doc's mansion. And bro, this guy is low-key kinda loaded. Hold on. He informs the mom their shop was unfortunately bent to the ground and that the pirates had already left. But while he was talking, Jim begins to tinker with the treasure. And it's actually quite funny how Doc was saying even with all his experience and knowledge, it would take him some time to decrypt the treasure. And at that exact same time, Jim does just that, revealing a hologram that was a map to the treasure planet. And I forgot to mention, but Jim was actually a genius and invented his first solar surfer at only 8 years old. They are all fascinated by the discovery and Jim is excited because this is the exact adventure he's been searching for his whole life. He tells his mom this could be the solution to all their problems if he manages to find the treasure. But his mom isn't about to let her precious son go on some crazy adventure, especially after their dad left them and he's now her only family. But even Doc was on board with the idea and offers to fund the whole expedition. I told you how this guy was rich. So after a little convincing, his mom agrees and they start making preparations for their new adventure. The next thing, we see them on this spot that was shaped like the crescent moon, looking for their ship. They eventually find it and get to meet the crew and the lieutenant. Jim was taking it all in as this is something he's been looking forward to his entire life. Doc mistakes the lieutenant as the captain, but introduces himself and then the real captain is revealed, who was Shorty right here. After she lands, she introduces herself and Doc does the same, but bro was way too much of a yapper as he almost says out loud Jim was the one who discovered the map. The captain shuts him up, dragging his eye into a cabin to talk in private. She basically tells bro to be careful what he says and who he says it around because she does not trust the crew he hide. She then has to see the map, then locks it up in a safe and keeps the key on her at all times. And then aside both Doc and Jim to duties on the ship. Jim got sent off to work for the chef of the ship and surprise surprise, he was a cyborg. He introduced himself and I'm not gonna lie, he was really efficient with his robotic arm, cooking up a meal for them. Jim was suspicious of him because remember, the mysterious guy who gave him the treasure warned him about the cyborg. But anyways, as he held up his spoon about to try out the meal, it transforms into this floating blob thing called Morph, who was a pet to the cyborg. It was time for the launch of the ship, but James got denied from trying to go see it. Imagine looking forward to this thing your entire life and then you get denied from seeing it. Like, bro, that would be crazy. The lieutenant tells the cyborg that he's been assigned to him and they try to protest, but it was the captain's orders. They have this back and forth where Jim was asking him questions because he's suspicious of him. And after a while, he sends Jim off to watch the launch of the ship and tells Morph to keep an eye on him. So the launch is starting and bro, this animation back then was beautiful. Why can't Disney recreate amazing worlds like this no more? As they begin to move, they started floating due to gravity. So they initiated the artificial gravity. The captain then gives orders for the coordinates and they blast full speed ahead. And again, look at how beautiful this animation and world is. Jim was just taking it all in while Doc was just being Doc. The chef comes up to have a little chat with the captain, but she asks him why his cabin boy was just roaming free. So he passes him a mop and a bucket to get to work. Later, while Jim was mopping the floor, Forearms over here just shoves him away for no reason. He then peeps some crewmates having a conversation and tries to listen in while mopping, but they caught him and started to press him. And by day, I really mean this insect guy over here. I'm just gonna call him Scorpion. Scorpion started pressing Jim, and bro, Jim was a YN, so he wasn't holding back on the trash talk, rage baiting Scorpion into almost sliming him out on his first day on the ship. But the cyborg interfered before he could get to that. The lieutenant then comes to warn him that anyone who gets caught fighting will be thrown to the ship's jail for the rest of the trip. The cyborg then has a talk with Jim before going below deck to talk with the crew. And if you couldn't tell by now, they are totally the same crew after the mysterious guy's treasure, because he tells them to stick to the plan. So the next few scenes was basically Jim getting used to his duties on the ship, while also getting kind of close to the cyborg because he was being like a father figure to him. Because you see from his memories, his dad left to go get milk, and that was the last they saw of him. I'm crying, bro. So in this scene, when the chef was taken off in this solar boot, Jim went back to that memory. The only difference this time being that the cyborg actually invited him over, and bro was excited. While the cyborg was over here trying to teach him how to control the thing and how everything works, Jim said, "Hold on, who do you think you're talking to?" Before taking over and blasting full speed ahead, had the cyborg holding on for dear life. I'm crying. But they had a fun time, and now comes the pain. They make it back to the ship, and while they was having this deep convo about life, dreams, and stuff, they hear an explosion. They head back up to check it out, and Doc peeps that a nearby star had gone supernova. And if you know science, that basically means it's exploded. So now they have to sail away from it. And one important thing to know is something called the lifeline. It's basically this rope that wraps around you and holds you to the ship. In case you get blown off, you can still get put in. I have no idea why, with such advanced technology that this world has, they couldn't make something better. Because even in our real world, we have this, and our tech isn't nowhere close to theirs. Because remember, these niggas is traveling between stars and galaxies. All we've managed to do is go to the moon, apparently. Anyways, they was doing their best to get away from the incoming debris, but this shit was right on their tail, even piercing through their sails and damaging parts of their ship. So they had to secure the sails. Everybody was working together, and this guy over here was shooting some of the incoming debris. And while Jim and Cyborg were securing the sails, Cyborg almost got put on a t-shirt, but Jim clutched up and saved him. They couldn't catch a break though, as this huge debris was flying towards them at full speed. Bro tried shooting it, but it wasn't working. And the funny thing is, bro begins to run. Like, why are you running? And bro, where are you going to go? You are in space. Just accept your fate like a champ and take it like a man, bro. It all seemed over for them, but at the last minute, Madra summoned them back to Earth for the Great Ninja War. So they started flying away from the ship. Nah, I'm just kidding. What actually happened was the star started to turn into a black hole. So now it started pulling everything into it, including the ship. But this is where the dog's expertise comes to play, as he predicted there would be another wave in a few seconds. So that gave the captain an idea to ride the wave out of there. She started giving orders to release the sails and tells Jim to make sure all lifelines were secure. So he gets to it, and after making sure it's done, he tells the captain that everything was secure. Just then, they hit a mini explosion, which knocks the lieutenant off the ship. But thankfully, the lifeline saves him. Also, we thought. Remember Scorpion? Yeah, this nigga was pure evil. He looks the lieutenant dead in his eyes while smirking before cutting his lifeline without a second thought. And that was the end for the lieutenant. He fell straight into a black hole. Dog warns the captain it's time, and she tells everyone to buckle up. We then see Cyborg protecting Jim like his own son, and this was kind of wholesome. They fell into the black hole and nothing happens for a few seconds before the explosion happens and sends them flying out of there at full speed. The day is saved and everyone starts celebrating. Captain walks down to congratulate Cyborg on how well he taught Jim before she asks if all hands are accounted for, but there was no response from the lieutenant. And that's when Scorpion pulls up with bad news, saying his lifeline wasn't secure, so unfortunately they lost him. Jim couldn't believe it because he knew he checked everything, but when he goes to check it, it was undone, obviously by Scorpion to cover his tracks. Cyborg looks at Scorpion and Scorpion just smirks, so he already knew he was the culprit. Captain gives a little speech before telling everyone to resume their post. Later that night, while Jim is sitting alone thinking and sad, Cyborg goes to chat with him, and Jim was feeling guilty, saying he always screws everything up. The cyborg gives him a beautiful, encouraging speech, and then Jim hugs him. Bro realizes he was getting too attached to Jim. He sends him off to bed, but guess who was up there listening to everything the entire time? That's right, Scorpion. I hated him so much when I was younger. The next morning, Jim gets woken up in the worst way before he and Morph decided to play a little early morning tag. This leads to him in the chef's kitchen, inside this barrel full of fruits. And while inside, the chef and the rest of the crew walk in while having a discussion. The crew was getting frustrated and just wanted to kill the remaining 3 outsiders and go after the treasure. But Cyborg grabs Scorpion and tells them they don't make a move until they have the treasure. Before tossing Scorpion crashing into the barrel, Scorpion reaches in for a fruit and Jim gives it to him. Before he says he thinks the cyborg, who was their leader, has a soft spot for Jim. But bro couldn't get caught looking weak before his crew, so he tells them everything he's been doing was just an act to get Jim off their tail, and that he hasn't gotten soft. Just then, one of the crewmates announced that the treasure planet was within sight, making the entire crew rush above deck to take it in. But Cyborg realized he left something below deck, so he goes to get it. Jim gets out the barrel, still surprised by everything he just heard, and when he came to his senses, he rushed to go warn the captain and Doc, but runs into the cyborg. He slowly walks Jim down, preparing to do whatever he was going to do, but Jim acted fast and stabbed him in the cyborg leg before running away. I don't even know why bro was screaming. It's not like you can actually feel pain in that leg. He climbs above deck, and after scanning around a bit, he sees Jim in the captain's cabin and realizes he really did hear everything. So he gave the signal to his crew to initiate their plan, and they was more than excited, moving to grab weapons and changing the flag to their pirate's flag. They chased them to the bottom of the ship where they were trying to get a solar boat to get away. But while doing that, Morph decided to play another game with Jim, taking the map and floating away, so Jim had to go after him while Captain and Dog shot at the pirates. Dog actually came in clutch, shooting this big hard thing, making the pirates fall out of the ship. Cyborg comes along to close the escape hatch before noticing Jim and Morph. And this scene was actually kind of funny because both of them was trying to get Morph on their side, but Morph couldn't decide between them, so he just went into this rope. Jim gets to it first and rounds off. Cyborg takes aim, but he couldn't bring himself to shoot. He gets to the solar boat and they shoot at the police, releasing it and escaping. But just when they thought they had gotten away, this idiot fires off a cannon, which Cyborg tries to divert because they could lose their map. But the shot still landed and injured the captain. They crash land into the planet and thankfully no one got hurt with the exception of the captain from earlier. She puts on a tough act and asks Jim for the map. Jim pulls it out, only for it to transform into mop. So turns out he grabbed the wrong one and the raw map was still on the ship. Just then the captain noticed they had company, so they had to hide, and after they passed, she handed Jim a gun, telling him to go scout ahead for a defensive hideout. So Jim wanders around. We see this unknown thing spying on him and Jim realizes it too. He goes to check it out and then gets jump scared by this robot thing, who I can only describe as kinda crazy and kinda touchy-feely. We found out his name is Ben and he's a bioelectronic navigator, and bro has been stuck on this planet for 100 years. That's just crazy. Jim tells him he ain't got time to chit chat because he had to find a hiding spot, but Ben got kinda sad, so Jim felt pretty and told him he could tag along, only if he kept really quiet. But even before they could go any further, Ben shows Jim his place and it was perfect. They all grouped up there, and I forgot to point this out, but Ben didn't mention he knew Captain Flinch and his treasure, but his memories were fried, literally, because he was going on about some bullshit which didn't make sense, but remember this scene for later. He also mentioned the reason his memories was fried is because his brain is missing. Okay, so back at the hideout, Ben was making everyone feel welcome, and just as they were settling in, he sees the pirates and started making a bunch of noise, leading to their location being exposed. He started to exchange shots, but the cyborg tells him to stop and calls out to Jim, saying he surrendered and just wanted to talk. They meet up to talk, but Jim wasn't on board with his plan, so he tells Jim he had until dawn to bring up the map or else. Jim goes back to inform the captain, and this info lets them know the cyborg doesn't know the raw map was on their ship, but now they had no way to get to it as the pirates were camping in front of their hideouts, and there was no other way out, or at least that's what they thought until Ben revealed the secret passageway. And turns out this entire planet was some kind of big machine. So Jim, Ben and Morph somehow got away back to the ship to retrieve the map. Ben goes to disable the cannons while Jim goes to retrieve the map. And guess who he runs into after finding it? Yep, Scorpion. But it was all Ben's fault. He chases Jim around the ship before Jim makes a sharp turn to pull out his blick. He turns around to point at Scorpion, who was shocked, but just then Ben messes up again, taking out the lights, and when they turn back on, Scorpion was gone. Jim was freaking out, searching around for him, while Bro slowly descending behind him. But before he could do anything, Morph pops up and transforms into two fingers, stabbing him in his eyes. Scorpion knocks Jim out, making him lose his blick before jumping on top of him. Pause. But as they begin to wrestle, Ben disables the anti-gravity, making everything float. Jim takes advantage of this to kick Scorpion away, but he wasn't able to get a hold of anything and continued to float. Scorpion got a hold of this rope and tries attacking, but only hit him a bit. Jim got a hold of the flag, but Scorpion was ready to pull out the same move he used on the lieutenant earlier. Jim tries reaching for the blick, but misses. Scorpion finally gets to him and starts taking his sweet ass time cutting the rope, but Jim ain't no bait. He quickly climbs down and grabs the mast. Scorpion notices and rushes in, but I have no idea what his plan was cause Jim weaves out the way to jump off him, sending him flying into the flag before the rope snaps and he got sent flying into space. Ben fixes the anti-gravity on the ship and the mission was done. They go back to the hideout with Jim excited and telling the captain to retrieve the map, but quickly found out the cyborg and the pirates had taken them captive before they got captured too. Cyborg tries opening the map, but he couldn't figure it out, which was embarrassing. So he hands it over to Jim, who punches in the sequence, activating it. And this time, it was a line pointing in a direction. But as they got excited, ready to go, Jim undid it, saying they have to take him along or he's not doing it. So they decided to take them all. They followed the line to this dead end and get frustrated when nothing was there and the line disappeared. This thing kicks James to the ground and he finds a hole with markings similar to the map, so he cleans it a bit before placing it in. It activates the planet and opens this portal, which could be controlled using this hologram. And that's when Jim finally understood the nonsense Ben was saying from earlier and how Captain Flinch was able to rob people all over the galaxy and leave without a trace. Cyborg didn't give a damn about that nonsense and just wanted his treasure, pushing Jim out of the way and punching a bunch of different coordinates. But Jim does a little more thinking and punches the right coordinates, opening the portal to the center of the planet, and behold, in all its glory, Captain Flynn's treasure. They were so captivated they didn't even realize this trap at the entrance, which they just activated. But yeah, they finally found the treasure and my god, this shit was massive. literally a mini moon full of gold and other valuables, and was being operated by this machine. They got so distracted they didn't even notice Jim slip away. He makes it to the ship, and his plan was to get it working again so they could escape. They found Captain Flinch, or at least what's left of him, sitting on his throne with something in his hand. Jim grabs it and realizes it was Ben's missing brain, so he puts it back in place and Ben remembers everything. He tells Jim Captain Flint didn't want anyone to find his treasure, so he set a trap and this whole planet is going to blow up soon. And just after he finished saying that, it begins. Jim tells him to go help the captain and dock, and that if he's not back within 5 minutes, they should leave without him before going under this control panel to fix the ship. Ben pulls him out, saying he's not leaving without him, and hey, yo, pause. He leaves and we see Cyborg in distress, trying to save the gold. These two idiots were so consumed by greed they end up dying. Cyborg scans around and peeps Jim on the ship, and it did have some gold on it, so I guess it will do. We capture the captain and Doc. Dog managed to get out of his bindings due to his small wrist, and then proceeds to rage bait this idiot before stealing his gun and pointing it at him. Jim gets the ship working again, but of course Cyborg comes to reap the benefits. Breaks like that one guy who doesn't contribute anything to the project but comes to take all the credit. Jim got mad and picks up a sword, telling him to get back. Cyborg wasn't about to let Jim get between him and his lifelong dream, but before they could squabble up, the ship gets hit, knocking Jim off and bro was falling to his doom. Cyborg manages to grab the ship, and Jim managed to grab a hold for dear life, but he was quickly losing his grip. Meanwhile, Cyborg was using every last ounce of strength to prevent this beam from booming the ship. Morph goes to tell him about Jim, and he peeps that he was almost done for. He tries to extend a hand to Jim, but Jim couldn't reach it and couldn't risk jumping. So now Cyborg had to decide between his lifelong dream or Jim, who he's come to grow attached to. In the end, he gave up the gold and saved Jim. They make it back through the portal, and even Jim couldn't believe he gave up the gold to save him. Their ship pulls up and they start to leave, but Ben informs them they're not going to make it in time to safely escape the explosion. So Jim gets the idea to use the portal and tells them to turn around and head straight for the portal. Cyborg asks how to change the coordinates, and remember all those crazy stunts Jim was pulling off for fun at the start of the movie. It was time for him to put those to use as he fixes this rocket skate with Cyborg's help and starts speeding up to the portal. Bro was moving so crazy, weaving and dodging all the debris. But just before he could make it, the rocket gives in and it starts to fall. It's all looked over until he slams the rocket into this wall, reigniting it and going back up, racing alongside the ship before narrowly making it and punching the coordinates for the docks in their galaxy. They came out with a blast, and this was actually tough, I'm not even gonna lie. Everyone starts celebrating and Captain and Doc hug before she hits bro with this devious look. Unc is getting some punani tonight. He boards the ship and Captain and Doc congratulates him. Captain says she's gonna recommend him to the Interstellar Academy. He then feels that the Cyborg was gone and he goes to catch bro trying to escape. They have a little emotional moment and Cyborg even asks Jim to join him so they could roam and explore the galaxy together. Jim said his older self would have jumped at this opportunity without a second thought, but he's grown now. So Cyborg ends up leaving him with some gold and Morph before taking his leave. And yeah, that was the movie. He reunites with his mom and they rebuild their shop better than before. Captain and Doc get married and have kids. And while they was having this party at the end, the cops walk in and for the first time ever, Jim wasn't in trouble, but had just graduated the Interstellar Academy. He had a dance with his mom and they lived happily ever after. This movie was so peak and I just wish it got a part 2. I haven't really seen anyone talk about it, so I decided to put y'all on. Subscribe for more content, like, comment your thoughts down below. I'm open to feedbacks. I love you guys consensually, and until next time, YC out.
This is the fight of our lives, and we're gonna win. Whatever it takes.
Listen to your mom.